Back then, I thought I was hiding my relationship with Noah. The embarrassing truth was, almost everyone knew. They were just waiting for me to stop pretending. My name is Ethan, and tonight, I was sitting on the couch in our apartment near Columbus while rain tapped softly against the windows, and Noah searched through streaming apps like he was conducting a federal investigation. He was wearing his old Ohio State sweatshirt, the red letters cracked across the front from too many washes, and on the coffee table between us was a wedding invitation from Lisa. Her name was written in gold script so fancy it looked like it required better posture. Underneath it, in the guest line, were two names side by side, Ethan and Noah. Noah glanced at the invitation, then at me, and smiled like he already knew exactly where my mind had gone. "You're doing that thing again." I looked over at him. "What thing?" He pointed the remote at me instead of the TV. "The thing where your face says you're remembering something embarrassing and deciding whether to blame me for it." I tried not to smile. "That does sound like something I would do." Noah leaned back into the couch cushions, looking far too proud of himself. "Is this about Lisa's wedding? Or is this about the fact that everyone in college knew we were together before you admitted we were together?" I immediately sat up straighter. "That is not true." Noah laughed so hard he nearly dropped the remote. "Ethan, I was careful. You jumped 3 feet in the air because I touched your hand under a diner table." Pointed at him. "That table had very strange energy." "Static electricity?" he asked. "Exactly." Noah's grin widened. "Brian still talks about that." I groaned and covered my face with one hand. Of course Brian still talked about that. Brian could forget his own backpack in 3 different lecture halls, but he remembered every awkward thing I had ever done with perfect accuracy. The apartment smelled like rain, coffee, and the takeout fries we had bought because both of us had promised to cook dinner and then betrayed that promise immediately. It was warm inside, safe, ordinary in the best possible way. But looking at Lisa's wedding invitation made college feel close again. It brought back Lake Erie, late-night dorm calls, secret kisses in stairwells, Noah showing up outside my building because he missed me even though we had seen each other that same afternoon, and a group of friends who were apparently much better at noticing love than I was at hiding it. Lisa had never been the problem. None of them had. Marcus, Jenna, Brian, and Lisa had simply watched Noah and me orbit each other for 2 years and somehow managed not to scream. "We know?" Directly into my nervous face. Noah reached over and took my hand like it was the easiest thing in the world. Years ago, I would have looked around first. Even in a quiet room, even with nobody watching, fear had a way of making me feel exposed. Now I just let his fingers lace through mine. "You know?" Noah said softly, his teasing voice fading into something warmer. "For the record, I liked watching you pretend to be subtle." I looked at him. "Why?" He squeezed my hand once. "Because you were terrible at it. And because you were mine even when you were scared to let people know." I laughed, but something in my chest softened, because that was the truth of it. Noah had loved me loudly from the beginning. I was the one who needed time to believe the world would not end if people saw us. And it all started before Ohio State, before Lisa's wedding invitation, before the lake house and the game that changed everything. It started right after high school, when Noah and I were already in love, and I was still terrified of what it would mean if anybody else could see it. People like to believe that once 2 people admit they love each other, the hard part is over. That sounds beautiful, but it is also completely untrue. Noah and I had already crossed that line before we ever packed a single box for Ohio State. By the end of high school, loving him felt less like a secret discovery and more like breathing. It was just there. In the way he saved me the last slice of pizza without asking. In the way I could find him across a crowded graduation party without even trying. In the way his hand always moved toward mine first. Like his body had already accepted a truth my fear was still arguing with. Noah was never the one who wanted to hide us. I need to say that clearly. Noah never hid me because he was ashamed. He hid us because I asked him to wait. That summer after graduation, we spent a lot of nights parked near Hoover Reservoir with milkshakes sweating in the cup holders and the windows cracked just enough to let in warm Ohio air. We would talk about college like it was some magical doorway waiting for us. New city, new campus, new people, a place big enough that maybe my fear would finally feel ridiculous. One night, Noah reached across the center console and took my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. For a few seconds, I let him. His thumb brushed over my knuckles slowly, and I remember thinking how unfair it was that something so small could make me feel both safe and terrified. Then headlights swept across the parking lot from a car turning in, and I pulled my hand back before I could stop myself. Noah went still beside me. He did not get angry. That almost made it worse. "Sorry," I whispered. Noah looked out through the windshield for a moment, then nodded like he was trying to swallow his disappointment before it reached his face. "It's okay. It's not you," I said quickly. "I know." His voice stayed gentle but quieter now. "I just wish you didn't have to look scared every time I love you where somebody might see." That sentence stayed with me. It still does. I stared down at my hands in my lap, feeling guilty and defensive and embarrassed all at once. "I'm trying." Noah turned toward me then, his expression softening. "I know you are." He reached over again, slower this time, stopping halfway like he was giving me a choice. I hated that he had to ask permission for something I wanted to, so I took his hand again. For a while, we just sat there together while the reservoir reflected little pieces of light in the dark. "At Ohio State, it'll be different," Noah said eventually. "Columbus isn't our town. Nobody's going to care as much as you think they will." I wanted to believe him so badly it almost hurt. "What if they do?" Noah squeezed my fingers once. "Then I'll still be holding your hand." I smiled a little, but my chest stayed tight, because love was easy when it was just us. The terrifying part was imagining the world walking in and having an opinion about it. Noah kissed my forehead before driving me home that night. He did not push. He did not complain. But right before I got out of the car, he looked at me and said, "I can wait, Ethan. I just don't want you to think I'm okay with pretending forever." I nodded because I understood. Or at least I thought I did. Back then, I believed college would make me braver automatically. I did not know yet that fear can follow you anywhere, even to a campus full of strangers, even into the arms of someone who loves you enough to wait. The first week at Ohio State made our hometown feel like a shoebox someone had accidentally mistaken for a place. Everything in Columbus felt bigger. The sidewalks were crowded with students dragging laundry baskets, mini fridges, and overpacked suitcases. Parents were crying near dorm entrances. Someone was blasting music from an open window before noon. Everywhere I looked, people seemed to already know where they were going, while I was still trying to figure out which building was north and which dining hall had the least terrifying chicken. Noah, of course, acted like he had been personally invited by the university president. He stood beside me on move-in day wearing a backward baseball cap, a duffel bag over one shoulder, and the kind of grin that made strangers want to talk to him. "This is it," he said, looking out at campus like he was in the opening scene of a sports movie. "Our cool college era begins now." I adjusted the box in my arms. "We had a cool era?" "Not yet," he said. "That's why it begins now." The only problem was, our cool college era was supposed to include living in the same dorm. We had requested it months earlier. Sitting at Noah's kitchen counter with his laptop between us and a bag of microwave popcorn we kept pretending was dinner. But Ohio State had other plans. Noah ended up in a loud residence hall near the athletic buildings, where people left doors open and shouted. Down hallways like volume was a personality trait. I got placed almost 15 minutes away in an older dorm with Kyle, an engineering major who labeled his desk drawers and once told me he found spontaneous conversation inefficient. Noah tried to be optimistic about it for about 12 hours. By the second night, he called me at 11:47. "This is unacceptable," he said before I could even say hello. I sat up in bed, trying not to laugh because Kyle was asleep 6 feet away with a sleep mask on. What is the distance? Noah, it's a 15-minute walk. Exactly. A cruel and unreasonable distance. I pressed my fist against my mouth to stay quiet. We saw each other after dinner. That was hours ago. 4 hours ago. Like I said. The next evening, he showed up outside my dorm carrying 2 hot chocolates, wearing a hoodie much too thin for the cold September air. His hair was messy from the wind, and his nose was pink. I opened the side door and stared at him. Did you seriously walk all the way here just to see me? Noah handed me one of the cups. No. I walked all the way here to complain about missing you in person. I laughed then, soft and helpless, because he looked so offended by his own feelings. We ended up sitting on a low brick wall outside my dorm, shoulders close but not touching too much. Students passed by carrying pizza boxes and laundry bags. Nobody paying attention. Noah looked at them, then looked at me. For a second, I thought he might say what he had said at Hoover Reservoir, that no one here cared as much as I thought they did. Instead, he only bumped his knee gently against mine. I hate saying goodnight to you and walking the wrong direction, he said quietly. My chest tightened. Me too. And I meant it. I hated it more than I knew how to say. Freshman year had barely started, and already Noah was finding every possible excuse to close the distance between us. He waited outside my classes with terrible vending machine coffee. He studied with me at Thompson Library even when he had no homework left. He called me every night, sometimes just to breathe quietly on the other end while I tried not to miss him too. Obviously, Noah was not subtle about loving me. He never had been. I was the one still looking over my shoulder, still measuring every touch, still pretending that being careful was the same thing as being safe. Freshman year taught me that Noah had absolutely no talent for loving quietly. He tried. I know he tried. But Noah's version of being subtle was looking at me from across a study table like I had personally invented sunlight. By October, we had developed an entire system of almost getting caught. There was the stairwell near Thompson Library, where Noah kissed me after a late study session, and I nearly jumped out of my skin when the door above us creaked open. Noah pulled back so fast he hit his shoulder against the wall. A girl walked down the stairs carrying 3 textbooks and did not even look at us. I still stood there frozen like we had just survived a police raid. Noah rubbed his shoulder, trying not to laugh. You okay? Fine, I whispered. You look like you saw a ghost. I saw consequences. He bit his lip, clearly fighting a smile. That is the least romantic thing anyone has ever said after kissing me. Then there was the laundry room under my dorm, where he came to help me fold clothes, which mostly meant stealing one of my hoodies and wrapping his arms around my waist while the dryers hummed behind us. I relaxed for maybe 5 beautiful seconds before Kyle walked in carrying a basket of socks. I shoved Noah away so hard he bumped into a washing machine. Kyle blinked at us. Noah lifted one hand. Laundry emergency. Kyle looked at me, then at Noah, then at the hoodie Noah was still holding against his chest. I see. After he left, Noah stared at the door. He absolutely does not see. He might see. Ethan, Kyle alphabetizes his cereal. He is not investigating us. But I was already folding the same shirt 3 times because my hands would not stop moving. The worst one happened at a diner off High Street. Noah sat beside me in a booth, close enough that his knee kept touching mine under the table. Halfway through his fries, he reached down and took my hand. It was warm and simple and so natural that for a second, I forgot to be afraid. Then the server came by to refill our drinks, and I yanked my hand away so quickly my elbow knocked my fork onto the floor. Noah stared at the fork, then at me, then back at the fork. Static electricity? He asked dryly. I picked it up, face burning. Maybe. He laughed, but it faded fast. Outside afterward, we walked along the sidewalk while traffic moved past in bright streaks. Noah was quiet for too long. Finally, He stopped under a streetlight and turned toward me. Maybe we should just tell people. My stomach dropped. Noah, I'm serious. His voice was gentle but tired. This isn't our town, Ethan. It's Columbus. Nobody is watching us the way you think they are. I stared at the cracks in the sidewalk because looking at him felt too hard. You don't know that. No, he said softly. But I know I'm tired of pretending I don't want to hold your hand. That hurt because I wanted it too. I wanted all of it. I just wanted it without fear, and I did not know how to separate those things yet. Noah stepped closer, then stopped himself like he was afraid even comfort might scare me. I'm not asking you to do anything you're not ready for, he said. I just need you to know I'm really bad at pretending I don't love you. I laughed once, weakly, because if I did not laugh, I might cry. You are pretty bad at it. His smile came back, small and sad. Terrible, actually. I reached for his sleeve instead of his hand. It was the bravest thing I could manage. Noah looked down at my fingers holding the fabric, then nodded like he understood exactly what that tiny touch cost me. Okay, he said. I'll wait. And he did. But every time he walked away from my dorm after saying goodnight, I could feel the waiting stretching between us. Sophomore year was when Noah's world got bigger, and unfortunately for my nervous system, I was invited into it. By then, Noah had collected a friend group the way some people collect campus t-shirts. Marcus was the loud one, the kind of person who could turn ordering mozzarella sticks into a public performance. Jenna noticed everything and said very little, which made her terrifying. Brian was sweet, distracted, and somehow, always holding the wrong textbook. And Lisa was warm in that easy way that made you feel included before you had decided whether you wanted to be included. The first time I really hung out with all of them was at a diner near High Street after one of Noah's shifts at the rec center. I arrived late because I had been working at the bookstore cafe, and before I even reached the booth, Noah looked up like somebody had turned on a light. You came? He said, smiling too widely. Marcus immediately looked between us. Wow, that was emotionally intense for a guy entering a diner. I froze. Noah kicked him lightly under the table. He's dramatic, Noah told me. Professionally, Marcus added. I slid into the booth beside Noah because it was the only open seat, which I later suspected was not an accident. Noah pushed a basket of fries toward me without thinking. They're the crispy ones. You like those? It was such a small thing, completely harmless. But Jenna's eyes moved from the fries to Noah's face, then to me. Lisa smiled into her straw. Brian looked confused, which was his usual expression, but even he seemed to sense something. That's a very specific fry preference to know, Marcus said. We went to high school together, I answered too quickly. Noah glanced at me with the corner of his mouth twitching. Apparently high school teaches fry science. Things like that kept happening. Noah remembered I hated too much ice in my drink. Noah reached behind me to grab napkins and rested his hand against my back for half a second too long. Noah laughed at my quiet comments even when nobody else heard them. And every time he did, someone in the group noticed. I tried to compensate by acting normal, which only made me look less normal. One night, while we were all squeezed around a table too small for 6 people, Noah's hand found mine under the edge of the booth. I let him hold it for maybe 3 seconds because I missed him, because his thumb brushed my palm, because I was tired of being scared all the time. Then Brian dropped his fork, bent down to pick it up, and looked directly under the table. I yanked my hand back so fast I nearly punched myself in the ribs. Brian came up slowly, blinking. Were you two holding hands? My entire soul left my body. Static electricity, I said. The table went silent. Noah stared at his plate like he was praying for strength. Jenna pressed her lips together. Lisa looked down at her drink, smiling. Marcus leaned back in the booth and nodded with fake seriousness. Right? Very common. Happens all the time between best friends under diner tables. Brian frowned. That is not how electricity works. Noah lost it first. He started laughing, then Lisa laughed, then Marcus, then even Jenna. I wanted the floor to open and remove me from Ohio entirely. But the strange thing was nobody looked disgusted. Nobody looked uncomfortable. If anything, they looked amused in the softest way, like they had just been handed a secret they already suspected. Noah's knee touched mine under the table again, careful this time, asking instead of taking. I did not hold his hand again that night. I was not brave enough yet, but I did let my knee stay against his, and somehow, with everyone laughing around us, that felt like a beginning. By spring of sophomore year, I had convinced myself that Noah and I were doing a decent job hiding our relationship. This was impressive, considering we were doing a terrible job hiding our relationship. The problem was Noah, not because he was careless on purpose, but because affection seemed to fall out of him before he could stop it. If I walked into a room, his face changed. If I was cold, his hoodie appeared on my shoulders like he had been legally assigned to provide it. If someone asked what I wanted to drink, Noah answered before I did. "Ethan doesn't like too much ice," he said one night at Lisa's apartment, reaching for my cup. The room went quiet for half a second. I froze with a tortilla chip halfway to my mouth. Marcus looked at Noah, then at me, then back at Noah. That is a boyfriend-level memory. I coughed so hard I nearly lost the chip. "It's not." Jenna raised one eyebrow. "You remember Brian's drink order?" Noah looked at Brian. Brian looked hopeful. Noah said, "Water?" Brian frowned. "I drink Sprite." Lisa covered her smile with her hand. I wanted to disappear into the salsa bowl. Kept getting worse. At the bookstore cafe, Noah came in during one of my shifts and leaned across the counter with that soft smile he only used on me. "Hey, baby, can I get—" He stopped so suddenly it looked painful. I stared at him. Lisa, who had come in with him, slowly turned her head. Noah cleared his throat. "Baby carrots," he said. "I was thinking about baby carrots." Marcus, standing behind them, whispered, "At a cafe?" I handed Noah his coffee without making eye contact. "Please leave." He grinned. "You love me." My eyes went wide. "As a friend." "Obviously," Marcus said. "A very carrot-based friendship. The group never pushed us in a cruel way." That was the thing I slowly began to understand. They teased, yes. Marcus especially treated subtlety like a personal enemy. But nobody cornered me. Nobody demanded a label. Jenna would simply notice when I panicked and changed the subject. Lisa would smile at me like she knew I was trying. Brian remained confused enough to be comforting. And Noah kept loving me badly in public and perfectly in private. Still, by the end of that year, even his patience started showing cracks. One night after he walked me back to my dorm, we stood outside under the yellow entrance light while students passed behind us with laundry bags and backpacks. He looked tired, not angry, just tired in the way people get when they have been good for too long. "I can survive hiding in public," he said quietly. "I cannot survive another year saying good night outside your dorm." My chest tightened. "Noah, I'm not asking you to announce us to the marching band," he said, trying to smile. "Although Marcus would absolutely arrange that." I laughed softly, but his eyes stayed serious. "I just want a door that closes behind us," he said. "A place where I don't have to walk away from you every night." That summer, Noah picked up extra shifts at the rec center. I took more hours at the bookstore cafe. We saved money in a shared envelope hidden inside one of my old textbooks because Noah said opening a real joint account felt too married for two people who still panicked when their knees touched under a table. By August, we had enough for the deposit on a terrible little apartment above a dry cleaner. The first time Noah held the key, he looked at me like he was holding the future. And for once, I was scared and happy at the same time. The apartment above the dry cleaner was terrible in almost every practical way, which somehow made Noah love it more. The carpet looked like it had survived 3 presidents. The heater made a sound at night like an angry ghost dragging a shopping cart through the walls. The kitchen was so small that if Noah opened the fridge while I was standing at the stove, one of us had to apologize to the other person's ribs. But it was ours. That word changed everything. Ours. The first night we moved in, we ate grocery store sandwiches on the living room floor because we did not own a table yet. Noah held up the apartment key like it was a championship trophy. "Look at us," he said proudly. "Responsible adults." At that exact moment, the bathroom light flickered 3 times and went out. I stared at him. Very responsible. Possibly haunted. Noah grinned. Romantically haunted. Living together made us ridiculous in the best way. Noah stole all the blankets and then blamed me for being cold. I left books on every flat surface until he started using them as coasters just to make a point. We bought a used pan from a thrift store, and Noah immediately burned grilled cheese in it so badly we had to open every window even though it was 40 degrees outside. "That pan had bad energy," he insisted, waving smoke away with a dish towel. I leaned against the counter, laughing so hard my stomach hurt. "The pan did not cook by itself. You can't prove that." Inside that apartment, loving Noah felt easy. He would come up behind me while I studied at the kitchen counter and rest his chin on my shoulder. He knew exactly when I needed coffee, when I needed quiet, and when I needed him to pull me close without asking questions. Sometimes I forgot we were still careful outside those walls. Sometimes I almost believed the world had shrunk down to one ugly little apartment, one haunted heater, and Noah's arms around my waist while pasta boiled over on the stove. Then our friends came over for movie night. Marcus arrived first with chips. Lisa brought brownies. Jenna carried actual plates because she said she did not trust our household. And Brian showed up holding a board game nobody had invited him to bring. For the first hour, everything felt normal. Loud, warm, safe. Then Noah ruined it by being Noah. I was in the kitchen trying to pour sodas when he reached past me, took the mug from my hand, and said, "Use the blue one. You like that one better." I froze. He did not. A few minutes later, I sat on the couch, and Noah automatically dropped beside me close enough that our shoulders pressed together. When I shifted, he pulled the blanket over both of our laps like we had been married for 20 years and had joint opinions about property taxes. Marcus stared at us over the chip bowl. His eyes narrowed with dangerous joy. "Wow," he said slowly. "Look at the sweet newlyweds." My entire body went stiff. "We are not newlyweds." Noah, somehow completely calm, picked up the remote. "Obviously, we can barely afford rent." Brian pointed at him. "That sounded more married, not less." Lisa laughed softly into her brownie, and Jenna suddenly became very interested in arranging paper plates. I could feel my face burning. Noah leaned closer, voice low enough that only I could hear. "Babe, they know." I turned to him in horror. "They do not know." Across the room, Marcus coughed into his fist. "We know a normal amount." I wanted to crawl under the couch and live there permanently. But no one looked cruel. No one looked uncomfortable. Lisa only smiled at me like she was trying not to scare a stray cat. Jenna gave Marcus one sharp look that clearly said, "Do not push him." And Noah, sweet terrible Noah, simply let his hand rest near mine under the blanket, waiting. After a long second, I did not take it. Not fully. But I let my pinky touch his, hidden beneath the fabric. Noah smiled at the TV like he had just won something. Maybe he had. Maybe we both had. Because for the first time, being seen did not feel like the end of the world. It just felt like our friends were sitting in our living room, eating brownies, and pretending very badly not to. No, we were in love. The Lake Erie trip started as Marcus's idea, which should have been our first warning. He found a cheap lake house about 40 minutes outside Cleveland and described it as rustic charm, which turned out to mean fishing nets on the walls, a couch that leaned to the left, and a porch screen door that screamed every time someone opened it. Still, for the first day, it was perfect. Jenna took blurry group photos near the water. Brian burned the hot dogs and then tried to blame the grill. Lisa made everyone wear sunscreen like she was legally responsible for our skin. Noah spent most of the afternoon brushing sand off my shoulder whenever he thought nobody was watching, which was ridiculous because by then, everyone was watching. I just refused to admit it. That night, after dinner, something in the room felt strange. Not bad, just strange. Marcus kept looking at me like he was trying not to smile. Jenna kept looking at Marcus like she was willing him not to ruin civilization. Lisa was being extra gentle, asking if I wanted more lemonade, if I was cold, if I needed another blanket. Brian opened his mouth twice like he wanted to say something, then closed it both times after Jenna kicked him under the table. I had no idea what they were doing. I just knew everyone at that table suddenly looked like they were trying very hard to act normal. Noah noticed too. He sat beside me on the old couch, close enough that his knee touched mine, and when I shifted nervously, he whispered, "You okay? Why is everyone weird?" I whispered back. Noah glanced across the room at Marcus, who immediately pretended to be fascinated by a bowl of pretzels. "Because everyone is always weird," Noah said. "That is not an answer. It is with Marcus." I found out later that it had been Marcus's idea, and honestly, I could picture the whole thing too clearly. Marcus probably stood in that tiny kitchen with a bag of chips in his hand and said something like, "What if we emotionally assist Ethan into honesty?" Jenna probably stared at him like he had suggested committing a federal crime. Lisa probably said, "Maybe we don't call it that." And Brian, because Brian probably asked if the plan happened before or after dessert. But at the time, I knew none of that. All I knew was that Marcus suddenly clapped his hands and announced, "We are playing Truth or Dare." "Absolutely not," Jenna said. "Absolutely yes," Marcus replied. "It builds community. It destroys trust," Lisa said, but she was smiling. Somehow, 10 minutes later, we were all sitting in a circle on the living room floor like high school seniors at a sleepover. The questions started harmlessly. Brian admitted he had once forgotten which dorm he lived in. Lisa confessed she had cried during a phone commercial. Jenna refused a dare so calmly that Marcus apologized to her. Then Marcus turned toward me with the expression of a man about to do something stupid and call it strategy. "Truth," he said. "Ethan, is there someone in this room you trust more than anyone?" My stomach dropped. The room went quieter than it should have. I looked at Noah. He was not smiling. He was just watching me, soft and careful, like he already knew I might run if anyone moved too fast. "That's a weird question," I said. Marcus nodded seriously. "It is a very normal, legally approved friendship question." Brian frowned. "Is that a real category?" "Brian," Jenna warned. I felt everyone waiting, but not cruelly. That almost made it harder. "Pass," I said finally, my voice too small. Marcus studied me for 1 second, then nodded like he had expected that. "Okay," he said, turning slightly. "Noah, let me ask you something easier." Noah went still beside me. Marcus's voice softened just enough for the joke to disappear. "Is there someone in this room you love?" The porch screen door creaked in the wind. Nobody laughed. Noah looked at me, and for the first time all night, I understood that whatever happened next was not really a game anymore. Noah did not answer right away. He just looked at me across the tiny circle of people sitting on that lake house floor, and somehow the whole room seemed to hold its breath with him. Marcus was quiet for once. Jenna's expression had softened. Lisa watched me carefully, not with pressure, but with the kind of kindness that made it impossible to pretend she did not understand. Brian stared at his own hands like he had suddenly discovered they were extremely interesting. Noah's knee was still touching mine. A small, familiar warmth. A question without words. "Are you okay? Do you want me to stop?" I could have stopped him. I knew that. Noah would have protected my fear even if it broke his own heart a little. He had been doing that for years. From parking lots after high school to stairwells at Ohio State, from diner booths to dorm entrances, from every good night he hated saying outside my building. He had waited. He had loved me loudly in every way he could, except the one way I had never been brave enough to let him. Marcus cleared his throat gently, no longer teasing. Noah. Noah kept his eyes on me. Yes, he said. One word. Quiet but steady. My heart started beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. Marcus asked, softer this time. Who? Noah still did not look away from me. Ethan. The room went completely silent. Not shocked in an ugly way. Not disgusted. Just still, like everyone understood this was not something to joke over. My first instinct was panic. It rose fast and familiar, telling me to laugh, deny it, make some terrible excuse about friendship and static electricity and emotionally intense diner seating. But then Noah reached for my hand and stopped halfway, just like he had done years ago in the car near Hoover Reservoir. Giving me a choice. Always giving me a choice. He's my boyfriend, Noah said, voice careful but clear. He has been for a long time, and I know we needed time before. He swallowed, and I saw how much this mattered to him. But I am now, if he is. That was the part that undid me. He did not push me into the light. He simply opened the door and waited to see if I would walk through it. I looked around the room. Lisa's eyes were shining. Jenna gave me the smallest nod. Brian looked like he was trying very hard not to cry, which was ridiculous because Brian once watched a sad dog commercial and claimed it was just allergies. Marcus had both hands pressed over his mouth like silence was physically painful for him. No one looked away. No one laughed. No one made me feel small. So I stood up. My legs felt unsteady, but I stood anyway. Noah rose with me, slow and careful, like he was afraid one wrong move would scare me back into hiding. I took his hand before he could ask. For a second, all I could do was look at our fingers together in the middle of that room. Visible. Real. Mine. I'm still scared, I admitted. Noah's eyes softened. I know. I squeezed his hand. But I'm more tired of pretending. Noah smiled then, and it was not one of his teasing smiles or his brave ones. It was pure relief. Marcus immediately made a strangled noise behind his hands. For the record, he said, voice thick, I have known since the static electricity incident. Brian pointed at me with way too much vindication. That was not how electricity works. Lisa laughed through tears, and somehow that broke the tension completely. Jenna pulled me into a hug first. Then Lisa. Then Marcus hugged both Noah and me at the same time, while Brian awkwardly patted everyone's shoulders like he was trying to bless a sports team. Later, I found out they had all known for months. They were never trying to trap me. They were trying to show me that the room I feared walking into had already made space for me. Years later, back on our couch near Columbus, Lisa's wedding invitation still rests on the coffee table, and Noah still reaches for my hand like it is the easiest thing in the world. I used to think being seen would change everything. I was right. It changed everything for the better.